everyone, welcome to this week's review for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Carrera and today I'm going to be talking about the book Testament of Youth. It was published back in 1933 by British author Vera Brittain and it has two adaptations. One from 1979 as a TV series I think, and one that came out in 2014 as a movie, which I've already done a review for. This is the first of three novels written by Brittain about her life. This one covers from the 1900s to 1925. Sequels are called Testament of Friendship and Testament of Experience, which I can hopefully read one day. Oh, and before I begin, let me say that this will be a video without spoilers. I first stumbled upon Testament of Youth through the movie back in 2015, and up to this day I remember the emotional roller coaster that was, and since then I've rewatched the movie dozens of times because I love it. It's become one of my favorite films of all time. So I was determined to read the novel the movie was based on one day, and now I finally have. This is a first autobiography of Vera Brittain covering the first 30 years of her life. We follow her from the time she was born through her idyllic childhood in the English countryside. We follow her to school and see the early roots of her strong character forming, because right from the start she was a very modern woman. If you compare her to the way other teenagers were thinking back in the start of the 1900s. For example, while other women dreamed of marriage and children, Vera was dreaming from something more. We also see Vera falling in love for the first time here. We see her determination to get an education at Oxford. Then we see how her world shatters over and over again because of World War I, as her beloved brother, fiancé, and friends enlist to go off fighting. And when this happens, Vera realizes that she can't stay behind and study. She has to contribute to the war effort in some way, and so she becomes a nurse. We see her suffer these terrible losses. We see her making lifelong friendships, meeting amazing people. We even see her nourishing the enemy soldiers back to health. And finally, we see what she's up to after the war ends, stuff which I shall be mentioning later on. And well, as we follow Vera through all of this, she writes in a very peculiar way. For example, when she is leaving her hometown for the last time, she tells us that this is the last time she's going to be there. She doesn't wait to tell us when she really exactly realized that that was going to be the last time that she was going to be there. So in a way, this makes us put the proper sort of amount of attention to some events in her life, which otherwise we would have maybe discarded as not being that important. I hope that made sense. I give Testament of Youth a 5 out of 5 stars review for so many reasons. From simple ones to more complex ones. For example, it is a very British novel, and being an Anglophile, I thoroughly enjoyed getting into the mind of a remarkable young woman I could identify with in so many different ways during my favorite period in history, because I am a history lover, World War I. Here, it really shows the effects of the Great War on everyone, whether it was the British soldiers fighting, or their family members, or the survivors from the war. It's really touching in this sense. It's also very well written, and it tells in a remarkable, awe-inspiring way what actually happened during this time period. I was mourning how I got to meet these young people whose innocence in a way was shattered by the war or cost them their lives. And I also like how this novel reminds me of my favorite book of all time, Gone with the Wind, in several aspects. For example, what it is being a nurse during a war, the way a war changes a civilization, marks the way the life of the people who survive it forever, as well as how the men at the start of a war are sort of eager to go off and fight because they dream of glory and serving their country. And yet, once they get there, everything shatters. This whole idea that war is glorious. I don't know. Stuff that's really difficult to get into and to talk about. But moving on, also, as with Gone with the Wind, we also get to see a war through a woman's eyes. And sometimes that aspect is forgotten when people talk about a war. And yet, that's my favorite way to look upon history, through the eyes of the woman who lived it. And it's also a very important part of history. What happens to the woman, to the ones who survive after such upheavals? On another subject, it's also fascinating to see how teenagers courted 100 years ago, because the romantic in me sort of aches and longs for those sort of relationships. There was a beautiful innocence that the world of today lacks. And talking about beauty, Testament of Youth is filled with poems, whether they were written by the author or by somebody else. And even though I've never really been that fond of poetry, some of them here moved me to tears. I should also say that somebody asked me which one I prefer, the movie or the novel. I couldn't decide because they're both precious to me in different ways. I mean, maybe I can recognize that the book is superior to the film, but the film really focuses on the emotional impact of the relationships between Vera Brittain and the men in her life that she loved, whereas the novel covers way more and shows that Vera Brittain was a really amazing, remarkable woman. And in a way, it was really surprising to read the book because I had no idea of all the amazing things that Vera had done before she was even 30. She truly is larger than life character. She was a feminist, a pacifist, an author, a lover, a nurse, a teacher, an activist, a wife, a mother, a grandmother. As a journalist myself, I was fascinated to discover that she was also a freelance journalist too. Not only did I enjoy her time at Oxford and her struggles to become a published writer, because I'm a writer myself and I want to follow in her footsteps one day, it also made me contemplate issues which I'd never really paid that much attention to. For example, nursing. And through Vera's experiences in nursing in 3 countries, it was really shocking and awe-inspiring and an eye-opener. And one more thing, I find stories with characters that go off to war and come back with PTSD really powerful. And knowing somehow that the stuff that I was reading about here had actually happened, it was so a really emotional journey. It was really mature and full of teachings about death and life, and most of all, love and second opportunities, and never losing hope even in the darkest of times. How it is alright to bend under specific circumstances, but it is important not to break, but to overcome and endure and live on. For the moment, I think this is all I have to say about Testament of Youth. Thank you very much for watching my review of it. I highly recommend you to read the book, and I hope you enjoyed my video. Please let me know if you watched the film or read the book or both, or if you didn't like something I said here. I want to talk about Testament of Youth with you. In the description box below, you can find the Goodreads page to the novel, as well as a link to my review of Testament of Youth, the 2014 film. Thank you very much for watching this week's review for The Mental Traveler. I'm Cara Herrera. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.